Well, at just 27, our next guest was diagnosed with bowel cancer, New Zealand's most common cancer, claiming more lives than prostate and breast cancer combined. Unsurprisingly, Dr. Jared Knoll is determined to raise awareness. Greetings.
Good morning.
Lovely to have you in.
Thank you.
So, you were diagnosed 4 years ago. Must have hit you like a bolt out of the blue.
Yeah, well, for me, I was at med school at the time, and I had just finished my fifth-year exams, which are the big exams in med school. And it was literally a week after that I presented with symptoms of a bowel obstruction, and I went into the Auckland City Hospital, and I ended up having surgery about 3 days later, and they did a right hemicolectomy, which is removing half of my bowel, and that's when I discovered I had metastatic bowel cancer.
You hadn't had the symptoms that most people get, though, had you? You had this bowel obstruction, but that was it? That was the only thing that
That's right.
alerted you?
I was a pretty unusual presentation. So most people, when they have a diagnosis of bowel cancer, will typically have an altered bowel habit for over 6 weeks at least. You know,
right.
more loose than usual, more frequent, or sometimes they might have blood in their stool. Sometimes there's unexplained weight loss. I didn't really have any of those things, to be honest. The bowel obstruction was the first I knew about it, and it wasn't until after they operated that we actually knew what was going on.
And you're 27 at the time?
I was discharged from hospital on my 28th birthday.
Oh, because you often associate bowel cancer with older people, would that be fair to say?
Yeah. By far the majority of bowel cancer is sort of in the over 50 age group. For somebody to get it this young, there's typically a strong family history of it, and there's a genetic component.
In your case?
In my case, there's none of that. So I'm a kind of a statistical outlier in a lot of senses because I didn't have these symptoms. I didn't have any family history. I had nothing really to give it away.
So 4 years down the track, you've done some rounds of chemotherapy, which has knocked you round. You're back working at the moment, but where are you at with your diagnosis?
So I had 6 months chemo and had to take a year off, and then I had a recurrence, and then I went back onto chemo, and then I did 41 rounds of that chemotherapy.
What was that like?
Well, it was a fortnightly regime, and basically 5 days of every fortnight I was not functional, and I was able to work for the remainder. And it's rough, you know, you'd nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, loss of hair, just extreme fatigue. And in November last year, they decided that because I wasn't behaving like a normal bowel cancer does, that they would try surgery. And I went for surgery in early February, Valentine's Day, in fact.
All the dates, birthdays, Valentine's,
right.
Strikey boy.
And this one was called a retroperitoneal lymph node dissection.
What's that in English?
Basically, it's quite a long surgery. It was 6.5 hours, and they cut you right open, and they bring your intestines out, sit it on the chest, and they essentially dissect out where the cancer was in the lymph nodes at the back of my abdomen.
As a doctor, that would have been really extraordinary to watch, but shame you would have been asleep.
I would have loved to have seen a video of it.
And so, where has that operation left things?
So the operation was in the hope that maybe it could be curative, but unfortunately I had a scan 3 weeks ago, so I only just found out 3 weeks ago that there are now new disease in the liver, which basically has left us back in the place we were pre-surgery, although with disease in the liver it's arguably a little more progressive, and what the future holds at this stage is anybody's guess.
One of the criminal things with all of this is just pre your first diagnosis, you and your wife, is she also a doctor? Yeah,
she's a paediatric registrar at Middlemore
You were
Hospital.
off to Africa to do amazing things in Zambia and, you know, give back to the world, and this has happened.
Yeah, I mean, one of Hannah and I's sort of passions have been wanting to do work overseas. You know, that's sort of one of our reasons for going into medicine for both of us, and that was going to be our first dabble in it. Yeah. And unfortunately, that sort of stopped us that time, and we've toyed about doing it again off and on, but it's very hard with, I really need to be in New Zealand for a lot of time for treatment reasons.
So in terms of, I mean, it's an awareness thing, isn't it? We have breast screening, we have cervical cancer screening, we don't have bowel cancer.
No, we don't have a nationalised screening program, and there are a number of reasons for that, but I think that those reasons are getting weaker and weaker. So part of the problem is that the tests that are available, specifically the one that tests for a bit of blood in the stool, it's not a massively sensitive test, so it can have false positives and can have false negatives. And then there needs to be, for the people who do test positive, the follow-up infrastructure after that. So it has taken a while for it to happen, but there is a pilot screening program out in Waitemata DHB at the moment, which is at least a start. But we would like to see some more movement of this, and perhaps some more guarantees even from the government that we might be able to get a more nationalised program in place.
And if you had any of the symptoms that you mentioned earlier, straight to a doctor?
I think so. I mean, no one of those symptoms by themselves is a red flag, but I think once you start to get the picture and putting it together, I do think the first port of call has got to be to your doctor, and they'll start to run some tests.
Thank you so much, Jared. Keep fighting the fight.
No problem.
Good on you, buddy. And there's more about Beat Bowel Cancer National Awareness Week on our website.